and I don't know if we'll have any guests, but we'll see. Right, hello everyone. Welcome back to a Splendid Isolation stream, uh, episode 54, and this is on Captain James Cook Part 2. We did the Part 1 on Iron Duke's channel, but Iron Duke, could you just explain to everybody why I'm on our channel at the moment? Because you wanted to explain beforehand, so the floor is yours.
Yeah, thank you very much, William. Look, guys, I'm sorry. I lost an email account which is like almost 30 years old recently on Yahoo. And that didn't matter too much, except I lost pictures of my son when he was a small boy that I don't have in other places, etc. But it did matter because somehow I got signed out of StreamYard. I don't know how. And I couldn't get back in because they couldn't send me the authentication numbers, And as a result, of course, I got hold of StreamYard straight away and from a different email address. And StreamYard said, well, we can change you to this email address that I used, which is a Gmail address, but it'll take 2 weeks because once you signed into StreamYards with this address, so you need to have a totally new address. So I've set up now a Proton email address, but StreamYards didn't get back to me in time for this stream today. And so William has very, very kindly said that he'll host part 2 of Captain James Cook Royal Navy on his channel. And that's what we're doing now. So, apologies, guys. Hopefully by the weekend normal Splendid Isolation stream, this will be sorted. But many apologies.
Thank you for that, and you can hopefully we can get back to normal. But so in the meantime, we're here for part 2, Captain Cook. In the
Part one, William, we should probably tell people. Part one covered
yeah,
Captain Cook's early life and all the rest of it,
yeah.
and how he became, how he got promoted to an officer in the Royal Navy, and all this kind of stuff.
So
Uh,
yeah,
and we're pretty much ready to start his first of his 3 great voyages of exploration. I think that would be accurate, William. Yeah.
yeah. So in part 1, so in the previous episode, Andrew, we covered his early naval career, and then of course his first voyage in which he would land in he discovered the Royal Society Islands. um he landed in New Zealand, and then of course landed at Botany Bay in Australia, along the east coast, in naming New South Wales. um
And he did really discover Australia. Okay, some Dutch guys knew some vague stuff, but only about the west coast of Australia. No one had ever come near the east coast of Australia before Cook.
yeah, and they went to land, met with the Aborigine there, and you know took the particularly the scientists like Banks and Co, and the botanists on board, took great deal of samples and diagrams and notes on the
Had
fauna and flora.
William had Aboriginals chuck spears at him, but didn't let his Marines fire back. He stopped them from firing back at the Aboriginals.
Yeah, and in both, I mean, particularly in New Zealand, one thing probably we didn't really get across is throughout the whole time while they were anchored, particularly in the on the what was it, northern end of the South Island, you had Maori warriors in their hundreds appearing along shorelines, gesturing towards sailors, marines, and so on, and to Cook himself that they were going to be murdered. Um, there was already note of cannibalism between some of the tribes. I think that Cook and his men were very much restraint in their behaviour, particularly at that time frame.
100%, 100%, William.
And there was an
The story today, of course, is that Cook was a vile colonialist who, murdered people and all the rest of it. It's utter nonsense. Cook used to allow native peoples to chuck spears at his men. And unless they killed or wounded any of them, he was very reluctant to fire back. Very reluctant.
I mean, quite frankly, I wish he did wipe out the Maori. The hacker stuff that we see today is just so cringe. It wasn't funny or cool when I was a child. When the rugby team did this, it's not cool now. When you see like
I'll,
soldiers
I'll
and
be I'll be
people like
honest with you, William, because I used to be an enormous rugby union fan. I wasn't totally against the Maori haka when guys do it, but when you see chicky babe like Maori chicks doing it, married women doing it, this is nonsense. They weren't even allowed to do that stuff in the old days. Like they would have got killed if they'd have tried to because it's a male thing. But anyway, whatever.
yeah. So yeah, there's that to it. They were restraint, and in the process, that in the first voyage there was this, I guess, personal ambition of Cook to, and maybe Banks to a lesser extent, but definitely Cook, the charting and discovering the Great Southland. And there's actually quite interesting thing I'll mention on, because we're sort of, particularly with the second voyage, 'cause with this episode, in my mind, sort of follow this on. We'll talk about his second voyage. Um, is that during the first voyage there is this thing, I don't know if you heard, it's called the Dauphin map, Iron Duke. I don't know if you're aware of this particular map. It was a map of the world. At that point, what was like, it would be it was northern France. You had these map makers who would try and make the most up to date map of the world at that time, that of the globe, that everyone sort of knew about. Um, and of course, one part of that was the the mystery was um, uh, the South Pacific and areas around Australia.
Everyone thought there had to be a great southern continent to balance the north. And of course, they were partially right because Australia is a continent. But
Yeah.
whilst it's a huge country, I mean, Australia is about the same size as the USA minus Alaska. Um, so it is a huge country. It's a continent, but it's a smaller continent than some people thought existed in the Great Southern Seas before Cook.
Mm. Yeah, and it's quite interesting because in the map there is, and there's a version that Cook definitely saw, and it is also reported that Banks even had a copy of it. Was a version that uh, was possibly 20, 30 years before their voyage, which included um, what would have been land of Papua New Guinea and eastern part of Australia. Now, this is the thing. It it doesn't resemble a landmass that we would recognise today of those regions, but it sits in the globe of what would be there on the map. Um, and so, supposedly this is from like merchants from like Timor and the Dutch and all that sort of stuff. This is where, a lot of it was just guessing. There was lots of guessing, and it's if people would look on like the Dauphin map, you wouldn't recognize most of the map, probably outside of Europe and parts of Africa. You wouldn't recognize the validity of that map. But
It's mostly fantasy, and that is one of the great things about Captain Cook and his three great expeditions is that he converted that fantasy map that you're talking about, William, into reality. Like, he showed people what's really there rather than what people imagined was there. And if you go aboard any ship in the world today, doesn't matter what country it comes from, doesn't matter if it's a merchant ship or a Navy ship, if you go aboard a United States Navy ship today, most of their charts are Admiralty charts, British Admiralty charts, because Britain spent, from the time of Captain Cook onwards, most of the late 18th and all of the 19th century and some of the 20th century, it has to be said early on, mapping the world accurately for the first time ever. It's another British achievement that nobody else did. Britain did that.
Yes. No. 100%. And yeah, you're right. Cook. The thing there is with the Admiralty, and particularly Cook and Banks, they knew that there was something there. As I said, they were looking for the Southland Terra Australis. That is what they were looking for, hoping to come across. But so yeah, they knew. I say that I don't think that they went into the unknown as much. They knew they would come into something, but they weren't sure exactly um, where everything was. The thing,
Let's give an example, William. Captain Cook's first voyage, he had 73 sailors and 12 Marines on HMS Endeavour. Yeah. And Cook's second lieutenant was Zachary Hicks. And his third lieutenant was a guy called John Gore, who was a 16-year naval veteran who had already circumnavigated the world twice on HMS Dolphin. He'd been around the world twice on HMS Dolphin. So, yeah, they had some idea of what was down there. Of course they did. They were, you know, the Admiralty and the Royal Society, who jointly financed Cook's first expedition, they didn't waste their money on nothing. They knew that they were going to find something down there, but Cook was able to give them a precise outline of what there really was, and that was the big difference.
no, 100%. And um, in the so yeah, we talked about the first voyage, and we mentioned his return, the Cook and Banks's return to England, and the what they what they were able to bring back, and uh, you the I was going to say now the second voyage. How soon after was that sort of commissioned? Because I believe was it remind me, Andrew, when was the first voyage? What year was the first voyage? It was 1770. Was it 1768?
The first voyage was 1768 to 1771, so it was over 3 years. Yeah.
Yeah. So the second
Yeah.
voyage was 1772 to 1775.
I think so. Let me just check. Yeah, it was. So this was another 3+ year voyage, and as we said on the last stream, William, in modern terms, you've got to look at it kind of like going to the moon. You know, it was that sort of going out into the unknown. I mean, yes, they knew things were there, but they didn't know precisely what was there at all. You know, like people at first didn't believe kangaroos from Australia. They certainly didn't believe things like the duck-billed platypus and what have you. So yeah, and there were thousands of new species of animals and also species of plants, of course, which is one of the things Banks was doing on the first voyage. Even today, one of the most common plants in Australia is called a Banksia, which is a kind of shrub.
And so, uh, the second voyage, Iron Duke, was, of course, solely to discover Terra Australis and to sort of the Admiralty's view was for Cook to either say, yes, the continent is there, or to sort of claim that, or finally admit that no, there is no great Southland that people since antiquity believed
Yes,
so.
the idea was to sail into the area east of where where Cook had already discovered the eastern side of Australia. And the idea was to sail extensively to the east of that, which, if there was some giant continent, it would have to be there. And of course, Cook did that. He sailed all around. He found quite a lot of little islands, but no big continent.
And the ships that Cook selected, um, on this one, because his ship was different. It was HMS Resolution, which was his ship, commanded by himself, and HMS Adventure, that was commanded by Tobias Fernax.
Yeah, so same. They were not only exactly the same design as HMS Endeavour, who, as we said on the first stream, Endeavour was basically a collier. She was used to take coal from Newcastle down to London. And that was the first sort of ship that Cook got his first seagoing voyages on in the Merchant Navy before he joined the Royal Navy. And they were excellent for this for a number of reasons. They had very large holds, so you could carry a lot of supplies, which, if you're going to be away for over 3 years, obviously you need, including fresh water and salt pork and salt beef and dried peas and all the kind of stuff that sailors used to take. Cook also used to take sauerkraut, which is one way of stopping sailors getting scurvy. Later on, the Royal Navy adopted lime juice, which is why the Americans refer to the British as limeys, which also worked. Hardtack, as Woodpit says in the chat. Lots of stuff you had to take with you. They were also very strongly built, which meant that, they would survive a storm or what have you. They had a shallow draft, so you could go into relatively shallow waters if you're like surveying a coast. And they were small enough that you could careen them, which meant tipping them over on their side so you could repair bits. And the great thing about wooden ship, of course, is as long as you took skilled carpenters with you, which the Royal Navy always did, of course, that meant you could repair them. And so they were really ideal. And when Cook was asked to select ships for his second expedition, he not only selected exactly the same sort of ship as HMS Resolution, one of these Newcastle colliers, he also selected a ship from the same shipyard because he knew that particular shipyard built really well-built, strong ships. So, yeah.
Yeah, and I've just brought up a map of the second voyage, so just to give people sort of like a sort of mental map. So he said,
You can see, William, where all these circles are to the east of Australia. That's proving there's no great southern continent other than Australia.
yes. I mean, the only thing that would come close to us would be Antarctica, I guess. Looking back now,
Yeah, but it's uninhabitable
yeah, yeah,
unless
yeah,
you yeah.
yeah. It's not like this. And the thing is, there were people in the Royal Society who genuinely believed that there was this continent, as we mentioned in the last episode. Some of Banks's colleagues who were saying that there was this great big continent like America. It may even have civilizations like the Mayans or the Aztecs, great farmland, and it's just waiting to be like Britain's Spanish Empire sort of awakening.
The
And
funny thing
yeah,
is, William, that if you look at like deep time and geological history, Australia broke away from Southern Africa originally, which is why there are certain plants, for example, in Southern Africa that also exist in Australia, fairly closely
mm,
related.
yes,
But originally, Australia started off as part of Southern Africa and then drifted um, eastwards, but also south a bit, and became much drier. Like originally, Australia was much wetter than it is today. Like even today, Australia still has some rainforest in the north, um, but originally it was much wetter than it is now. And as I say, there are plants that are fairly closely related in South Africa and in Australia.
yeah.
I
Um,
think it used to be called Gondwana land or something like that before the Earth split them up. You know.
yeah, it's like the Appalachian Mountains were part of what was it? The Western Isles of Scotland and Western Ireland and things like that, um, and sort of like that. That's where you have that sort of similar type of terrain.
Yeah, it's like India is once again used to be part of Gondwana land, but is now crashing into Eurasia, which is why you have the Himalayas, the highest mountains in the world.
Yeah. So the they set sail, um, and Banks, who was uh was meant to travel with Cook on this second voyage, withdrew after. Is this when he had a bit of a falling out with Cook and the Admiralty because it was over? It was like modifications to the ship and things like that. He wanted more of a say in the uh how the ship, what was on the ship
Yeah,
and the operations.
I think you're right, William. Um, Cook, who understood the sea and navigating, and also wanted to bring his crew home. Like one of Cook's big deals was he wanted to bring almost all his crew home alive if he could. You know, you're always going to lose one or two in a 3-year adventure like this, but he basically wanted to bring his crew home safely. And Cook would not allow Banks to make changes to his ship that would make the ship less seaworthy and less survivable. And that's entirely justified. I mean, Cook was in the right in that.
No. And so I was bringing up the rest of my notes here. Yeah, so the replacing Banks was the German naturalist Johann Reinhold Forster, um, and his son George Forster, and he also included astronomer William Wales, um, who brought along the K1 uh, uh, chronometer carried on the Resolution. Um, that one is the I was just going to say the uh, I was going to say that it's similar to what we mentioned yesterday for helping of the mapping, but also for navigation as well. It's meant to be like it was meant to be a uh, sort of more easier way for navigating, particularly as we see what uh, Brown Tahiti that he's going to be going in all sorts of directions and everything. So it's sort of helping with the uh, um, covering the right amount of ground, or ocean, I should say. And also you had Lieutenant Charles Clerk and artist William Hodges, who a lot of the artwork you'll see, and the thumbnail is included in that. There was another one I probably there's a watercolor one actually I wanted to include, but of HMS Resolution and Adventure. Um, and also I was reading a biography on James Cook, particularly his uh, oh, excuse me, on James Cook and the second voyage. Now, uh, this one was
If
hold on a
you
sec.
if you look down, yes, thanks, William. That's a portrait of James Cook that was made during his second voyage. So that's what he looked like during his second voyage.
So another person who joined the crew inadvertently was supposedly Banks's mistress, who joined the crew. Um, I guess expecting Banks was going to be on board, but she didn't realize that he wasn't aboard. And she dressed up as a man, effectively. And this was in the biography.
Is this true, William?
Yeah, I will cite this one now.
No, listen,
I
I'm perfectly prepared to believe you so long as you believe it. But who on earth
the
did she end up palling up with?
well, this is where it gets a bit bizarre because this this is by Rob Mundell, who's quite this is on his Captain James Cook biography by Rob Mundell, saying that this woman, she she was discovered relatively quickly and was sent packing.
I bet. I bet if she was Banks's mistress, she would have been quite cute because Banks was very rich. So yeah.
Yeah, yeah. There was a there's quite a funny story that sort of follows it. That a, a couple of the uh more hardened sailors sort of figured, they thought, oh, this is a strange young, teenager and all that sort of stuff, teenage boy, obviously with like it wasn't like she was pretending to be a sailor or anything. It was actually part of the science team. um but the thing was, the scientists realized, well, we don't know who this young fella is, and he has quite a very sort of high pitched voice, and he looks very glamorous and pretty, and it's, oh, hold on a sec. And supposedly, and again, this is what Sean Mandel says, is that it was when um the mistress in disguise was apparently caught while washing. Somebody walked in and noticed the you know the fact that there was
As
a woman.
you would, you know, especially if you're
And
about to set out on a 3-year voyage around the world with no women. But yeah,
yeah, apparently this and when Cook arrived in the Cape, and this is when he was saying like the last bit of letters back, this is where it was cited. Now, um, he wasn't very happy with Banks, that Banks was, if Banks was aboard, that he was going to, sort of pull that sort of stunt. So that was another reason why again, they wasn't very happy with him going forward. But yeah, I think when I when I was reading the letter, I think Cook found it slightly funny. Found it all rather a bit funny, to be
yes,
honest. But
yes, I think he would have done it. Cook seems to have had a pretty good sense of humor.
yeah,
Someone Woodpit in the chat is saying bad luck to have women on board. I will tell you, Woodpit, right? In the 18th and 19th century, it wasn't uncommon for one Royal Navy officer to give another Royal Navy officer's wife a lift to a foreign station. but they would only do so for relatively short voyages. So, for example, if Captain Smith's wife wanted to join him in Gibraltar, she could probably get Captain Brown to carry her there. Okay, or even maybe Malta, but you weren't going to get carried around the world. There were a very few women who could be on Royal Navy warships. Like, for example, quite often the gunner's wife would be allowed to stay aboard. But the gunner was usually an old and grizzled veteran in his 50s. And so his wife was not really going to lead any of the sailors astray, you know, that kind of thing. And I think that's the way it worked, really. But yeah, the idea of taking your mistress around the world, um, it might have made Captain Cook smile, but I don't think he would have allowed it.
No. Yeah, and also it's like unauthorized passengers. There's like a whole like yeah, it's sort of a deception. The funny thing is, and this is where I don't know because I honestly this is according to this is called the Rob Mundell. I because before this I never actually heard that story, particular one, and there doesn't seem to be anyone else like there doesn't seem to be any other historians that corroborate that story. It's just apart from like letters that were sent back, and also interviews from certain sailors. They just mentioned it as a funny joke or something like that. But the thing there is um, it could be that Banks, when they made up later on, asked Cook and the Admiralty not to mention that because of course it would be a big scandal because he would go to high society functions with his wife Dorothy, and it was like a story of him trying to smuggle a dressing up his mistress as a man and all
Could
that sort
could
of
could
stuff.
be, William. Could it
Yeah,
could well be. Yeah, listen, I could imagine Banks doing that. Banks was that kind of 18th century rakish kind of guy. He might have tried it. I don't think Cook would have allowed it, but Cook would probably have found it funny because Cook always strikes me as someone who had a good sense of humor, like
yeah.
most true
At
English
first,
people.
it, I mean, at first he would be angry with the publicly. He would be angry with the deceptive nature and the his authority and with the authority on the ship, and then probably in privately in his study would have a chuckle with it because it would be
Yeah,
quite a funny.
exactly. It is that this guy, all the sailors are going to have to make do what they can find around the world, but Banks is trying to be special,
Yeah, yeah. So yeah, that purportedly happened. Yeah.
And of course, don't let's underestimate the importance of female companionship. I mean, much of the mutiny on the Bounty was a result of the sailors spending too long in Tahiti and enjoying the dusky maidens too much. So I mean, let's be truthful.
Yeah, so after departing, as I mentioned, they arrived in the Dutch Cape Colony and stopped in Cape Town on November 1772. Um, and then they planned on sailing eastwards to circumnavigate the globe uh, on the sort of latitude lines of 50 to 70. Um, and this is where they first came into, and I'll just bring up the map again. Um, so let me just hold on a sec. Here we go. So it's around here that they discovered the. I don't know if you Andrew, can you see where my mouse is on the screen here?
I can't at the moment, but that's because I'm not watching it on YouTube. But people
Oh,
on
okay.
YouTube will be able to.
Okay, so if you if people could see the red line, there's like a east of when the red line goes east of Cape Town, and there's like an arrow point on that red line. That is
Yeah,
where
no, I
Cook,
can see what you mean. Yeah, I can see
yeah,
what you mean.
Cook. This is where Cook spotted his first iceberg. Um, and this was where it was noted. I think it was by William Hodges and others, and this is where this started drawing sketching uh, as well for his painting that I might bring up. I'll try and bring up in a minute, but yes, um,
Yeah, Woodpit is saying that area is extremely rough seas. Yes, the wind blows really hard. I think the Navy used to call it something like the strong 40s or something like that. And
yeah,
you get great big, massive waves. And even with a sailing ship with tall masts, when you're at the bottom of the wave, the wind doesn't get to their sails. And then as you come up, the wind hits their sails really strongly. So you've got to like double all the stays and the ropes and all the rest of it. It's a really dangerous place to sail. Yeah, the Roaring Forties, Olander B. Thank you. But yeah, it is. It's very rough ocean down there.
mm. And then Cook, when they came across the this iceberg, he ordered a experiment. His crew to retrieve cut out blocks from the ice, melted them down on board, um, tested it to see if it was good drinking water, um, and uh, and just sort of noted down what it was like. And um, on the 17th of January in the new year in 73, the crew became the first recorded Europeans to cross the Antarctic Circle, which is, quite an important achievement.
Yep, yep.
For
And
yeah,
another British achievement, William. Uh, you
I
know,
mean, I know they.
this is why Cook is so great. He does so many things for the first time,
I'm
right?
gonna actually I'm sorry, I'm going to even correct the record here. It says European. I'm actually gonna say like first human, because I doubt any other, I doubt a non-European, has done this.
Well, if they did in some flimsy canoe, they would have died
Yeah,
sooner after. So yeah,
yeah. Maybe the mangled bodies floated. It's just like a. It's why I don't count Magellan as being the first person to circumnavigate the world. His crew that survived surely, but at one point you're just hauling a dead body along for the rest of the journey. That doesn't really count, but um, um, the funny
Yeah,
thing is that
this is one of the things that's worth pointing out about. Yeah, woodpit icebergs are freshwater. Yes. This is one of the things worth pointing out is that Cook's great achievement is that not only did he do all this, but he lost hardly any of his crew while doing it. Like he was
yeah,
such a good skipper that he lost very few of his crew when he did this. I don't think Cook lost 50 guys in all three of his great exploration voyages.
no, no, not um, I I I think, just trying to think. I don't. There wasn't even in great number when they had conflict with Maori and everything. And the Maori, I think there was one person who was killed in some sort of. I think it was more of an accidental sort of like a fall or something. But there wasn't anything like there was no, there wasn't like.
He did William, he did lose a handful of blokes to natives.
In the second voyage, yeah,
And when that happened, he would fire back. Although normally what he did was he would fire over their heads first to try and scare them off. So he was always trying not to shed blood. He was not a bloodthirsty man at all. Although he was a man of war. I mean, in the first episode, we talked about how he made his name in the 7 Years' War. Fighting against the French. Cook was in no sense a coward, but
No,
he was not a guy who wanted to go out there and kill people for the sake of it. That wasn't his deal at all.
no.
And
Now,
as I said, one of his proudest achievements was he did all these voyages, and most of his crew came home.
now the problem with his the Commander Tobias Fernax is he didn't follow Cook's dietary plan, and upon under his commands, there were men who did die, and there were a lot that contracted scurvy, which was unfortunate.
A hundred
Um,
percent. I think, William, if I remember correctly, because we did it a few weeks ago now, but I think when we spoke in the first episode, we pointed out that Cook had one guy given 12 lashes, I think it was, right? Which is a pretty minor punishment in the Royal Navy in the late 18th century, because he wouldn't eat sauerkraut because he didn't like it.
yeah,
And Cook's point, and he said this in one of his diaries, he said, look, if I don't do this and the sailors don't eat this, they'll die of scurvy, and I'm not going to let them die of scurvy, you know? So that's why he did it. It wasn't from a bad motive. And 12 lashes is a pretty minor punishment for those days.
yeah. No, I mean it's fair enough, and I mean today, what if you refuse? I mean, you probably get kicked out of the navy. Um, I was watching a documentary. Just a quick detour here. I was watching a documentary on the aircraft carrier HMS Elizabeth, and the more recent one. And when they were docked in Florida, and some sailors got involved with a fight with the police, local police at a bar that was meant they were, they got on the punch up. Apparently, the police were behaving like assholes with them and stuff like that. So
And
yeah.
what happened, William?
Well, the sailors, a taser was drawn. Um, a police officer got beaten up, and then the
Good,
others, because they were the sailors
good.
were also drunk, so they got arrested. I think it was about probably like six of them. This was a it was a few years ago, mind you. But I only saw this documentary come out, and they had like obviously the
When you
judge.
say when you say a few years ago, William, what do you mean? And did you say it was HMS Queen Elizabeth?
Yes,
So the current carrier.
yes.
My son has served aboard that ship. Um, Good. He
Uh
would
oh.
have been very happy to hear that the sailors fought back.
Yeah, and from my understanding, Anjuk, is that in that the judge when they appeared in court the following day, and they were handed back to
For the
the ship
Navy to
command
punish. For the
for the navy
Navy
to
to
punish.
punish.
And
I don't know how that goes these days, mate, but I can tell you when I was in the army, if you went up before your colonel for being arrested for fighting, right? If you turn around and told him, for the honor of the regiment, sir, you'd get a very minor punishment. Very minor. Even if that wasn't the real reason for the fight, because, you know, you were supposed to be like that.
to be fair, the I guess the captain, the he said like he thought it was just some over the top American coppers that were looking for any excuse target British sailors, and he
Yeah,
didn't really think
exactly. And
much
are
of
you
it.
going to let your mate get tasered? No, you're not. No,
No,
you're not.
no.
You're
Um,
not.
but they went. I think that there was the narrator said, "Oh, they could be kicked out the navy," and I was just thinking to myself, well, number one, they shouldn't be kicked out of the navy for that. They didn't do anything wrong, and number two, um, you know, I guess, I mean, back then, if something like that happened, I guess that would be what, lashes, several lashes. If they were stopped in the
Yeah,
ship, then yeah,
but yes, William. But think of it this way, right? If you're on a warship, yeah, and you might end up fighting the enemy, who do you want next to you? A guy who will let your mates be tasered, or someone who'll fight? Because I know who I'd want next to me, and it would be someone who fights.
it's funny because the captain, sort of made that point you just made when he was being asked, because of course, when it came down to it, the sailors, they obviously they weren't kicked out. I think what they did was, when they went to the next port, they weren't allowed to go. They had to stay on the ship, and they
Yeah,
had extra, like,
no shore leave. Yeah, no,
yeah, no,
I
surely.
bet. But
And they all
you want guys who'll fight on a warship, and you want guys who'll stick with you. You want guys who are your friends. You know, if a missile hits your ship, yeah, and you're trapped in a compartment, you want a bloke who's going to come and risk his own life to get you out of that compartment. Like that's how you win in a naval battle. You know, someone
yeah.
who if the ship is hit and there's a big hole in the side, will risk his life to plug it up. Fighting men are fighting men. I'm sorry, they just
Yeah.
are.
I mean, the other thing is that they were all the sailors involved, because it was six of them. They were all Scottish or Scousers, which I thought
Don't care.
it was.
I've met good Scottish people. I've met good Scousers. Uh, I like people who've got my back. If someone's got my back, I've got their back. That's the way it works, and it should.
Yeah.
And
So,
in the military, that's even more important.
do you know what? And yeah. I mean, ultimately they got one of them. I think the one that got tasered and punched the sort of the because most of them, I think it was like either a fray. It was one particular sailor that got into, I guess, had a bit of more, because he was the one that sort of punched the officer, got himself tasered and all that sort of stuff. His punishment was extra cleaning duties, along with the ship leaving out, all that sort of stuff. The thing though is, um it is quite interesting, because um I do think, because his commanding officer, they had like this whole, like, I guess, like, hearing, not like a trial, but like a sort of a hearing, and he set out his reason and everything. I don't, they didn't record it. The cameras didn't record it, so I don't know what he said in there. He may have said what you said, defending the honor of the ship or something, but effectively he said afterwards that, you know um he was just told that, just when you go ashore next time, just be wary, because you have like these big American egos, effectively, which I thought was, that was basically response from his officers.
Defending your mates should be enough, as far as I'm concerned. If you're in the military, and I include the Navy in that,
Yeah.
if you're in the military, you should defend your mates. And if you don't, you're not going to be much good in the military, in my opinion.
Well, it's also morale, because obviously word got out around the rest of the ship about what had happened, and if you're and just think about it for a sec. If suddenly, like, the command, throw all those sailors under the bus and said, no, let the Americans deal with them, and all that sort of stuff. I mean, it's or if you punish them too severely, because, yeah, as you said, this is, um there has to be that trust, there has to be that respect, um and also, quite frankly, it's, uh, well,
I'm reminded, William, of a famous fight that happened during a NATO exercise. Like, I don't know, because I'm an old bastard, probably 35 years ago. And the British parachute regiment got in a fight with some American Marines, and in a pub. And it came to the commanding officer of the British parachute regiment battalion, and he looked at the list of people, and he said, "Well," he said, "we have more men arrested, but the U.S. Marine Corps have more men in hospital." And he just smiled. And yeah, it's kind of how it is. Young men are going to be young men.
yeah, yeah. And if people, where it was Jacksonville Beach.
This is a big aside from what we're talking about, William.
Yes. Uh, if
But
people look
yeah,
into this,
but
yeah. If
but
you,
look at it, guys. Honestly, and I don't care if you're an American or British, German, any country you want to come from. Your military guys should stick together. You know, they should.
yeah,
William, let me ask you, mate. All right, um, if you're out with 3 or 4 mates and you get in a fight and they all walk away, will they still be your mates? Because if it was
no,
me, they wouldn't be. They wouldn't be.
no,
I'm sorry.
no, no. No, they wouldn't. No, I would not be happy about that. And
No, and if you're out with a couple of mates and one of them gets picked on, are you going to walk away and leave him on his lonesome? I don't think so,
no,
because that's
just,
not what men do. You know, you have to have this loyalty thing going on as a man.
I will say though, because we will go back to the subject at hand, the topic at hand. But I will say what makes it worse is I looked at the story. It's even worse because the sailors weren't. I'm guessing they were like drunk and everything. They were leaving the bar, but the police stopped them because one of them was jaywalking and then tasered him for jaywalking.
Get fucked.
And
All
that's
right.
when he decided to hit
I hope
the.
they beat the shit out of him, frankly. But there we go. But no,
Yeah,
look, as far as I'm concerned, if you're a man, your friends are your friends. And if you don't stand by them, you have no loyalty and you're not a man. If you walk away from a friend in trouble, you're not a man. And in the military, and as I say, that includes the Navy, that's even more important. You never ever do that. You just can't.
yeah, true, true. Um, I remember my dad saying there was like um he says that he remembers hearing was it this in the 70s when old Ark Royal docked in Mayport, and there was um and you had a lot of sailor fights. It was quite it was quite well known. But yeah, it's
Yeah, as Woodpit says in the chat, the army fights the navy, everyone fights the air force. It's always that way. It's been that way. Absolutely was that way even in Captain Cook's time. So to get us back to what we're talking about, but yeah,
yeah,
you
yeah,
you 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 have to have that loyalty, and good officers realize that they have to have that loyalty too, at a slightly different level, but they still have to have it.
yeah. And it's a thing that's it probably happened. It did happen between the Roman legions and sailors and the Roman navy and the
Absolutely.
triremes. Yeah, it happened.
Roman legionaries would fight each other. Roman legionaries and auxiliaries would fight each other. And as you correctly say, William, the Roman navy would fight Roman legions. This has always been a military thing. you have this loyalty to this particular branch or unit that you're serving in, and it's important. And it is because in war, that's what helps you win. Because you stick with your mates,
Yeah,
you support your mates, you make sure your mates don't get killed as much as you can.
100%. Right, sorry about that sort of bit there. Um,
No,
so
William, I think that's interesting. But Captain Cook would have absolutely understood that. He would have understood the sailors of his ship on his second expedition, perhaps getting in a fight occasionally with the other ship of his second expedition. He would have understood it. It's a
I,
male loyalty thing, and it's
I say
natural.
if Captain Cook was in Jacksonville when that happened, he would have bombed the port. He would have bombed the city. He would have bombarded the city. No, no, probably not. But yeah, yeah, yeah,
He would have supported his sailors, William. I'm quite sure.
yeah, yeah, yeah. I
If
mean,
you want to, and someone mentioned this earlier. Let me see if I can find it. Oh, Oland B mentioned this earlier. If you want to know late 18th or early 19th century Royal Navy captains' opinions about sailors' fights and stuff like this, go read Patrick O'Brien and his Aubrey Maturin books. There's about 20 of them, and they're fabulous. Olan B mentions Desolation Island, which is excellent, by the way. But there are many others. And in some of them, Jack Aubrey, and yes, if you've watched the movie Master and Commander, it's
yeah,
that Jack Aubrey. He understands how his sailors go ashore and they sometimes get in a fight. And as far as he can, without breaking discipline, he will always support them because that's what good officers do.
no, 100%. So as we said that they were the first people to cross the Atlantic, sorry, the Antarctic Circle. Um, and the thing that is, while we see on the map here, Cook never um saw and sighted the Antarctica itself at any of the voyages. And he got very close. He got very close to doing it, but it was a combination of the weather, the waves he mentioned, but also, and this is something that's noted by Cook, it is this absolute thick fog that made it impossible for him to
And also the ice, Willie.
well, and also the ice.
Yeah, yeah.
Um, yeah. So that and it, in Cook's mind and in the scientist, the German scientists on board, Forster's mind as well, that there wasn't there wasn't well, actually I will mention this a bit later on, but there looked less likely that there was a southern continent. It was when they went round Tahiti and left New Zealand, they were sort of, it confirmed at that point that there wasn't. But as we get to um, apparently his convoy though did get within 75 miles of Antarctica though, so they were, I mean, very close. As you can see, they got within
Yep,
75
yeah, no,
miles.
absolutely, mate. Yeah, they were the first humans to cross the Antarctic Circle and survive.
I'm guessing if they did see the shoreline of Antarctica, they would have um I guess they would have referred to that as Terrace Australis, or they would have thought that be the southern continent. Though not.
I'm not so sure about that, William. If you look at some of those earlier maps that you were talking about earlier, um, they were always they were closer to Australia than where Cook went. Like Cook went so far south, you know. Um, and I think you can say that common sense would have told those people that, given the Arctic was covered in ice most of the time, um, well, was all covered in ice, but you know, greater or lesser. Common sense would have told them that was the same at this stage. I mean, given that the ancient Greeks knew the world was a globe, so yeah, I don't
Yeah,
know.
I mean,
Yeah, I don't know if you agree.
yeah, um, yeah, they probably would have thought it just be. I mean, even if they saw it, they probably would they be able to distinguish it as a constant or just endless ice sheets. Yeah, who knows? Um, yeah. So in February of '73, we talk about the Antarctic fog. The Resolution and the Adventure became separated, um, and Fernax made his way to Tasmania to the prearranged rendezvous point, um, used in the event of a separation. Um, Cook would then go on to join Fernax in New Zealand in May. Um, Once he had gathered up, the ships had gathered, they sort of rejoined. They would gather up at the next meeting point in May, which would be back in New Zealand at Charlotte Sound. Um, and this is where they sort of began trading with the Maori people again. Um, and in Cook's journal, he actually then sort of came to a quick realization that some of his crew members were giving the Maori women STDs. Um, and you know, but the problem was the Maori men were encouraging their women into prostitution. So yeah, it sort of became a bit of a problem for Cook. Saw that as a bit of a problem, um, possibly. So he may have been worried about going back the other way.
Yeah, maybe, I don't know.
I think he was worried that they would get the Maori would how they would respond if they were women becoming ill or something. Um, um, then in June, the fleet departed New Zealand and went eastwards, as you mentioned, looking for Terra Australis. Um, and this is where on Fernax's ship on the Adventure, you had about 20 crewmen contracting scurvy, and one of them who died because he didn't follow Cook's dietary instructions from the first voyage and also on the second voyage. Um, and as you can see on the map, they then started to perform this uh, sort of anti-clockwise maneuver in the South Pacific, um, to in search of the continent, um, visiting. In the process, they would come across Tahiti, Tonga, um, and then afterwards returning back to New Zealand in on towards the end of October. Um, uh, the adventurer they became. I was going to say they got lost a second time in a storm. So Cook went back to the rendezvous point to waited 3 weeks to depart, um, but then ended up having to depart alone. Fernax arrived back at Queen Charlotte 5 weeks after they separated, so he missed Cook by 4 days. So they just missed each other, um, and
No radios back in those days, guys. Of course.
no, and we've talked about this before when we talked about uh, the fleet at the Battle of the Nile. There were several occasions where the French and the British fleet ended up missing each other by mere moments. Where
Yeah, yeah. The same with Villeneuve's fleet before Trafalgar. Nelson and Villeneuve missed each other by a day or two, a couple of times. Um, yeah, no radios.
yeah,
No
no,
radios, no radar. That's what happens.
yeah, no sonar, no nothing. So modern sailors today, naval, you don't realize how lucky you are. You don't realize how lucky you are. Um, so while uh, Fernax ordered his men, while they were landing in Charlotte Sound, um, to gather provisions ashore. Um, this is where a violent altercation occurred with the Maori, resulting in deaths of all 10 men who were sent to you know, gather provisions. Apparently, Fernax, who went with other crew members aboard, um, went ashore and found their bodies partially burnt and what he described as in preparation for some cannibalistic feast. So they were planning to eat the sailors that were killed.
Yeah, some Maoris were noted for cannibalism. Not all of them, but some. Yeah.
Yeah, and the crew who were present were obviously not very happy about this, pretty disgusted and angry. Um, Asked Fernax to go and basically kill them. They wanted revenge. They wanted to go get armed, go off and kill the Maori. Um, the local village or what have you, and it's that sort of revenge. Fernax said no. Uh, Basically thought that could sort of backfire possibly because he didn't know exactly where all the Maori were, and this thought it was a bit of a poor deal. So they ended up just returning to the ship, and
He might also, to be fair, William, he might have also worried that they would get the wrong Maori people. You know.
possibly, yeah. You think it's this village here, and it's actually like a totally different village, like down the coast or something that has nothing to do with this tribe or something like that. You end up just like wiping out the wrong people by mistake. Yeah, could be. Um, and so they left New Zealand and returned to Britain without Cook. Um, Apparently, when Cook later found out of what happened to Fernax's crew, um, I did wonder if the Fernax's crew were at fault. And he put on here, I must observe in favour of the New Zealanders that I have always found them of brave and noble, open and benevolent disposition. Or particularly the people that the tribe that he was dealing with. And I think I'm Duke. This is how I read it. I think the Maoris that Cook and the Fernax usually dealt with were not the same tribe that um, supposedly killed these 10 sailors and um, uh, prepared them for some sort of feast, cannibalistic feast. I think they're
Yeah.
maybe
No.
a
I
different
think
tribe.
yeah, William. I think you're entirely correct. These were different Maoris. Yeah. I think
Yeah,
that's true.
eh, I and it was actually John Mundell as well, the author of the book I saw reading biography, puts out a theory that that it was very common you'd have these roaming raiding parties, and while depending on where these sailors were found or where they went, they may have gone. you know, they may have been out scavenging, and unfortunately, a rival tribe or raiding party came across them and thought, oh, well, here we go, we can, you know, fresh meat sort of thing, and um,
100%,
yeah,
100%. Um, when Cook gets back to England, he's made a post captain, which is very important. Um, Post captain means you're no longer a lieutenant. Like for his first two voyages, Cook was a master and commander, and he was always called captain because that's what you call the captain of your ship. Even if he's a lieutenant, you call him captain in the navy. But for his first two voyages, Captain Cook was the master and commander. When he got home to England after his second voyage, they made him a post captain, and this was a really important deal because if you became a post captain in the Royal Navy, that meant that eventually, if you survived, you would become an admiral because after post captain, all promotion was by seniority. You could be given better jobs by the admiralty and the government, of course, but you were going to creep up that list, and you were going to become, first of all, a rear admiral. So after his second voyage, Captain Cook was definitely going to become an admiral if he lived.
yes. Um, and so while that was going on with with Commander Fernax on his ship, we go back to the Resolution. Um, so with Cook, they made a loop back round the South Pacific, heading south, sort of visit towards Easter Island and Tonga, and then of course returning to New Zealand, um, continuing the search for pterosaurs by heading southeast, and then reaching her most southern latitude of 71 uh, 10 degrees. This was in January 74. Um,
I'm sorry, William. I thought you'd almost done with the second voyage. I beg your pardon.
Sorry, no, no. I just wanted to mention this bit because there's a good diary entry here, and also Cook's health because he gastroenteritis and yeah, he could have actually died on this voyage. He was not well towards the sort of latter part of it, but he wasn't doing too well. Um, so so at this point, Cook's came across a pack of ice, the ice sheets again, and this is where he put in his private diary. I will not say it was impossible anywhere to get in among the ice, but I will assert that the bare attempting of it would be very dangerous enterprise, and what I believe no man in my situation would have thought of. I, whose ambition leads me not only farther than any other man has been before me, but as far as I think it possible for man to go. So this is like Cook's mentality just here on one year. He wants that he wants to go, pure adventurous spirit.
But but with a great deal of sense. Like he doesn't want
Yeah.
to go somewhere he can't bring himself and his men back from. This is the thing that stands out about Cook. Yes, he has this enormous ambition and he wants to like map the world basically, but he doesn't want to do so at the cost of his crew's lives. He wants to do so like as a responsible commander, someone who wants to bring his men back. This
Yeah.
to me is one of the things that is really outstanding about Cook is that he's
Yeah.
always got this responsibility for his crew.
Yeah, and this is where it gets a bit bad. Actually, this is where the second voyage nearly goes sort of wrong for the ship and the crew. So during this time, this is early '74, as I mentioned, Cook experiences a severe bout of gastroenteritis, with constipation and abdominal pain, which, I mean, today, it's nothing. Back then, you know, that you're talking like death by consumption, diarrhea. I mean, all of that sort of stuff could and would lead to death very easily. It's a very dangerous thing to have. Um, and his by February, his condition of that had worsened to the point where he became bedridden. And this caused a bit of panic with the crew, um, as well as the fact that the ship was out of fresh provisions and meat. Um, the German scientists, the Forsters, offered their pet dog to be made into a soup for Captain Cook to consume. Um, I don't know if
Scumbag, scumbag bastards. But anyway,
yeah, I couldn't do that. I could, I'd say, listen, sorry, Captain, I like you, but
I
you're on
don't
your
like
own.
anyone. I don't like any individual human in the entire world enough to do that at all.
Yeah. Um, Unfortunately, for Cook did consume the soup. I will say though, in Cook's defense on this, he would have been completely delirious at this point. He would not have like no, he probably would
He
not
had
have been.
no idea. He had no idea what he was doing. I know.
No. Um, Actually, on an interesting note, who would be in command at that if Cook was, because he was
The second lieutenant, of course,
the second lieutenant. So the second lieutenant would have been
he would have been
would
in command. Yeah,
yeah, it would have been, he would have been in command over this. Um, and because the interesting is obviously that then they were waiting for bowel movements, which then resulted towards the end of the month. So he went like with 4 weeks, 4 or 5 weeks, with not taking a dump. I mean, um,
all right, this is like getting really depressing. William, please
yes.
push on.
Sorry. Um, so, but after that, he sort of made a slight recovery, but he was still weak for a month. Um, in June of '74, the ship stopped to resupply on the island of uh, Nomuka in Tonga, where most of the crew sort of went ashore and engaged with the local women there. Um, the cook was apparently berated. This way, he was berated by an older woman after he declined cons consistent with his usual, uh, basically declined the sexual relations with young women who were offered to him. He wouldn't engage in any of that, and so the old matriarch became a bit angry with him of the local tribe. Um, and from there they sailed on round to New Caledonia, where he became the first European to set foot in September '74, in which he claimed the land in the name of his king. Um, and what other notes I got here? Oh yeah, George Forster, the boy, the younger son of the scientist, um, even though Cook warned him, decided to eat the liver of a poisonous pufferfish. Um, and then it rendered him again somewhat bedridden, but also without use of his legs for some time. And he did recover um, with emetics later on, and some sort of bed rest as well. Then Cook finally returned backwards to the anti-clockwise back to Queen Charlotte Sound, welcomed by the Maori, engaged in conversations with them, and this is where he sort of first discovered and learned about a bit more about what had happened with the adventurer and the sort of 11 months earlier. Um, but what the Maori didn't tell him about the violent encounter, with the 10 dead crew and the cannibalism stuff, which again, sort of, he didn't find that out until he returned back to London. Um, all they said is that there was something went on, and there was he was told that there was a fight, but the Maori said that uh, it was there was a fight that broke out, and then they went back to ships and went off. They didn't realize there was a whole cannibalistic thing of 10 dead sailors or anything like that. So as I said, I stick to my previous theory on that it was a different tribe. Leaving New Zealand, then the Resolution sailed south of Terra del Fuego, stopping on South Georgia Island in January 75, where Cook charted the coast and claimed the island group in the name of the king. Um, I guess technically you can include the Falklands in that. I would. Why not? No one else claimed it at that point. Um, and also discovered the South Sandwich Islands. Uh, then stopped in South Africa and finally sailed north back to Britain.
Yeah, and of course, South Georgia and the South Sandwich Islands are still part of the Falklands and the Falkland Islands dependencies.
There you go. And yeah, so on Cook's observations when he went back from the second voyage is that, and this is from the German scientists present and all the scientists present, is that the general consensus that Terra Australis did not exist, um, and that was, I guess you could say, that became sort of settled within the minds of the Royal Society. They were quite happy, and that was the final. The only thing was that uh, I guess you could that, as you could say, the only other thing was, as I mentioned, was that of course he did come within 75 miles of the coast of Antarctica, but without realizing it. So while he was looking for one landmass, he actually um, you know somewhat charted the coast of of another one. So there you go.
Yeah, absolutely. And sorry, William, I went ahead of your narrative. But like I said, when he gets back from this voyage, Captain Cook is made a post captain, which is really important in the Royal Navy, because once you're made a post captain, so long as you survive, you are going to finish up as an admiral, because post captains, in their turn, are promoted to, first of all, rear admiral, obviously, um, and um, and then vice admiral, and that's why eventually you end up an admiral. So even quite ordinary post captains who survived that promotion, eventually they end up a rear admiral. They don't always get to fly their flag. Sometimes they were like not sent to sea, but they always end up as admirals. So at this stage, Captain Cook, who joined the Royal Navy as an ordinary sailor, remember, um, he's going to become an admiral. And at this point, William, we should probably turn to his third voyage.
Yeah, do you want to go? Have we got enough time to do his third voyage?
Yeah, I think we have, mate. Yeah,
Okay.
we're unless you're short of time,
No,
we're only on an hour and 25. I think we can do this in half an hour,
yeah.
given that
Yeah.
Cook ends up getting killed during it. Spoiler
Yeah.
alert, guys.
Spoiler
Um,
alert. Yeah. Spoiler alert.
his
But
third
actually,
voyage.
I was just going to say, as you mentioned, yeah, he got the rank of post captain, and he was given an honorary retirement um position posting it as an officer at Greenwich Hospital,
Yes.
which he wasn't very happy about, was he?
No, he wasn't. But the thing was, they were trying to allow him to have a genteel lifestyle without having to do another long voyage. That was the Admiralty's idea, which I think his wife worked out actually. If
Yeah,
you look at Cook's diaries, like the idea was that, you know what, Captain Cook, you've done such brilliant stuff now, and even although you joined the Royal Navy as an ordinary sailor, you've proved yourself to be an extraordinary man, and we now want to give you a job, which is basically you don't have to do a lot. You get a good salary, but you don't have to do much. And because you're a post captain, you're gradually going to go up on the list of post captains until eventually you become a rear admiral. If you want, you can relax now, sir. That's kind of what they were saying to him,
yeah.
William.
I mean, he did achieve a lot because he was made a fellow of the Royal Society as a reward.
Exactly.
Um,
Yep.
and also he was given the Copley Gold Medal for a paper writing on the methods of preventing scurvy, which was, I mean, it's still used today.
Yeah,
It's
that
still
was
used.
important for the Royal Navy in those days. That was really important for the Royal Navy back then because that's how
Exactly.
you keep your crew fit.
And it is still it's still cited by some doctors today. You know, when you have I remember there was a case of, I think I think it was in the United States, of some like vegan vegetarian who didn't like
Mm,
didn't do the diet properly and ended up developing scurvy, and his paper was cited by the doctor for treatment, because it's like when you're a doctor, or when you're any practitioner, you're looking back through all cited um under any condition, you look under anything cited, no matter how long,
yeah, and
yeah,
if you to avoid scurvy, you need vitamin C, which the human body doesn't produce, and therefore you need plants that give you vitamin C, including, of course, citrus fruits like, oranges, lemons, limes,
yeah,
etc. Although Cook's way of doing it was sauerkraut, which worked, but later on the Royal Navy settled on limes. But yeah, no, like as I said, Cook basically, after his second voyage, he could have retired had he wanted to. But as you rightly say, William, he didn't. He wanted to do another voyage, which is why he ends up doing his third voyage, which is, I think, three ships, if I remember correctly.
yeah. And it was the purpose of the third voyage was to the Northwest Passage, wasn't it? That was the purpose of the third voyage.
Yeah, absolutely. And if you want to look at another good stream on my channel about this in our history stream series, Adam and I spoke about the Franklin expedition in the 1840s, which was also looking for the Northwest Passage. So yeah, it was a big deal for the Navy in the late 18th and early 19th centuries.
Yeah. And I think there was two ships actually on the third. What it was? It was HMS Resolution, HMS Discovery. Yeah, HMS Resolution, HMS Discovery.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I
Admiralty.
think you're right, William. I think it was two. I don't know why I thought it was three, but okay.
Yeah, I think the previous ones did three. This one is only two. But the Admiralty wanted Charles Clerk to lead the expedition with only Cook acting as a consultant. Um, uh, it was Lord.
Cook was never going to stand for that.
Yeah, during a dinner with the First Lord of the Admiralty, Lord Sandwich, Cook stated while discussing the section of officers that he would lead the voyage himself. Um, I do like it with Lord Sandwich. Cook would never ask; he would just say, "No, I'm leading it." He just he did this a few. I've noticed in the previous ones with Lord Sandwich, he would just say, "No, I'm doing it." He wouldn't ask.
Yeah, Sandwich, of course, is an interesting character. It's where we get the word sandwich from, by the way.
Yeah,
Sandwich was quite a big gambler, and he would sit at the tables for a lot. He was a rich guy, obviously, and he would sit at the tables for a long time gambling. And he invented the idea of meat between two slices of bread as something to eat. And that's where we get the word sandwich from. And it is
yeah.
Lord Sandwich.
So Cook, who sailed on the Resolution with a crew of 112, while the Discovery commanded by Clerk. And Clerk actually, he's actually been on Cook for all three of the expeditions. Started off young and quite young, and at this point he was at 33, I think. So he sort of raised up under Cook's command.
Under Cook, yeah. But this happened all the time, William. In the late 18th and early 19th century Navy, officers who served under senior officers, if the senior officer liked them, he would promote them. And so this is why people like that were able to get better and better jobs in the Navy. Cook obviously liked him and said, "Yeah, no, he
Mm,
should be promoted." There was a lot of what's the word? I'm trying to think. If you liked somebody, and it might be your relative, but it didn't have to be. It could just be someone who you thought did a good job. You could get them promoted. That was quite common in those days. And I don't think it's necessarily a bad system, unless, of course, the senior officer is an arsehole. But if he's a good senior officer like Cook, he's only going to promote good people under him.
yeah, and there actually are some pretty big naval names that are on this third voyage, which we'll mention. You had, of course, John Gore, who was an experienced circumnavigator and oldest officer after Cook. And he, because all of these lieutenants from the previous voyages were given
But
promotions as well.
Bly's there, isn't he, William? I think
Yeah,
Captain
William.
Bly is
Yeah,
there.
William Bligh's there. Um, um, William Lanyon, but also you had Nathaniel Portlock. Um, I'm just trying to think who else was. Oh, George Vancouver. That was again another. Um,
Yeah,
yeah, was
absolutely, William.
present.
There were some quite famous naval officers who served in this third expedition. And bearing in mind, as we said earlier, when Cook leads this one, he's a post captain. And
Yeah.
whilst a master and commander can recommend
Oh,
officers
oh,
under him um, to some
sorry.
degree, just a second,
Yeah,
William.
yeah,
Whilst a master and commander can to some degree, recommend officers under him, and the admiralty might or might not take notice of that. When a post captain recommends officers under him, the admiralty almost always takes notice of that. So these more later famous Royal Navy people serving under Cook at this time is kind of it proves the point of that. I'm sorry, William. What were you trying to say?
I was going to say another name which would be familiar, Duke, is Edward Roy, who would served as a captain under Nelson at Copenhagen. So you again, this is where you're having your Nelson. Later on, you'd have your connection with Nelson. And did Nelson ever write about Captain Cook or ever like comment
Well,
on Captain Cook?
not only that, William, but Bligh served under Nelson too.
Blythe as well, yeah.
Yeah,
So
Bligh served under Nelson. People don't. People think Captain Bligh only did that mutiny on the Bounty voyage, which is, if you watch the movie versions, they're all a lie. The only one that is even remotely close is the most recent one, where what's his name?
is it Anthony
William.
Hopkins?
Yeah,
Anthony
Anthony
Hopkins, yeah.
Hopkins plays Bligh. That's the only one that is even remotely close, and even that isn't really accurate. Bligh was a very good officer and a very good navigator, and as I said, he was one of Nelson's captains. I can't remember under which battle now, but one of Nelson's three battles, Captain Bligh was one of his captains. He was a good officer.
Yeah. Um, so yeah, you have all these sort of and of course, this is. I think this is where, I mean, of course, where he dies, but you have um well, see, Bligh at this point, he was at 21 years old, and he was master on the Resolution, and I think he was only in under 6 years of naval service. Um,
And of course, William, as we said in the last episode, at one stage, Captain Cook himself had been the master of a ship. Like
yes,
not the commander, the master, which is the sailing master, which meant he was in charge of navigation and stuff like that.
yeah. So so Cook left uh what was it, England, um on the 25th of June, sailed so he left Nor on 25th of June, sailed to Plymouth, um and that's where Marines would come aboard, and the Discovery crew joined as well. Um this is where they would gather. Then the crew, they sort of waited there for a couple of weeks until July, where Cook ordered Clerk to proceed to Plymouth to report for duty. And unfortunately, Clerk, he had a few debt problems, and at this point, he was imprisoned due to debts incurred by his brother. And Clerk was put down as a guarantor. So and naval and political figures close to Cook, and people he made contacts with in like the Royal Society, everything, tried to have him released by the end of July. Um, I tried to have him released, but earlier, but they could only release him towards the end of July, in which he was able to travel to Plymouth. So there was a bit of a delay because of that, which didn't look very good for Clerk. But yeah, debtor's prison. That um, Cook stopped at Tenerife to gather provisions and livestock. While there, Cook interacted with French and Spanish naval officers involved in scientific work and navigation. Um,
To be fair, William, the debtor's prison stuff had nothing whatever to do with Cook.
no, that was Kirk who was in prison there, yeah, and
Yeah. Nothing to
it,
do with Cook whatsoever.
no, it had nothing to do with him. It was just that it was embarrassing for the Navy. I think what it was is it it was perceived as for Clerk. It was undermining. He was a prominent. It was his promotion.
To,
It was
to be fair, it was far from unknown for naval officers to be in debt. I mean, that wasn't something that was unknown at all, or army officers for that matter. You know, officers were often in debt. That wasn't that big a deal, to be fair.
yeah. I'm just surprised they didn't release him early. Given the level of establishment support that was behind. It's like or write it off or something, or have his name removed from the. I mean, they couldn't sort of wiggle that sort of influence.
No, you had to know the very right people for that to happen.
Yeah,
The very right people. What, old boy?
yeah. Oh, hold on a sec. Let me get the third voyage map up. Um, yeah. So afterwards, Cook departs from Tenerife, heads for Cape Verde Islands, uh, and then passage.
I've been there, William. By the way, I've been to the Cape Verde Islands.
Oh, how was it?
When I went there in the very early 1980s, and they let us off. I was on a South African Airways 747 jumbo jet, and they let us off for I think it was 2 hours, and you walked into the airport lounge, which was not air conditioned, and there was peeling pictures of the local black dictator on the wall, and you could buy warm beer for far too expensive a price. But it was warm, it wasn't even cold. And in the background, you could see a Brazilian Hercules, like C-130 aircraft. But yeah, I've actually been to the Cape Verde Islands. I don't think many people have been there, but I have.
um, just trying to think if my dad went there. I'll have to ask him later on. Might have done. Went round
It used to be,
Ascensions.
but back in the day, William, it used to be Portuguese, I think. But yeah, but I went there. I was flying down South Africa, and South African Airways weren't allowed to fly across Africa. So sometimes, depending on their aircraft, they need to refuel halfway down. So they'd land at the Cape Verde Islands. But that's how I ended up there. It was comical. If I had a good sense of humor, I could have wrote a really good skit about it, like peeling pictures of the local black dictator on the walls. Yeah, it was quite amusing. I kind of liked it in a way, but yeah, that's the only reason I went.
Yeah. And then from there they went towards Brazil, to the coast of Brazil, um, south of the equator, and then finally east to Cape. And we see it on the map here. On the right hand side of the globe, going towards the Cape. Um, it's worth noting that when crossing the equator, the crew performed the traditional ducking ceremony, um, which Could you explain that, Andrew?
Prince Neptune. The first time you cross the equator, especially as a sailor, you're supposed to meet King Neptune, and you get ducked and soaped and all sorts of things. And it's a traditional Navy ceremony. I dare say they don't allow it anymore because there are women on ships these days, and women would moan, and women spoil all men's fun, as always. Unless it's
Yeah,
blowjobs, of course. The only men's fun that women do any good for is blowjobs. But then you have to find a good girl. So there we go. Sorry,
okay.
William. I'm distracted.
Uh, okay. Oh dear. Okay. So Bly didn't. Cook didn't record this event, but Bly did. Um, as well in his journal. Um, Cook reached the Cape of Good Horn on the 17th of October and anchored in Table Bay the following day. Um,
It's the Cape of Good Hope, mate, not the Cape of Good Horn.
sorry, did I say the Horn? Sorry, the Cape of Good
Yes,
Hope. I
you
meant to say, yeah.
did.
I just made up a new cape. Just made up. So I'm so tired. I made up a new cape. Cape of Good Horn. Oh, um,
It's probably a male cape, mate. It's probably a male cape.
I tell it's a good thing I'm not a Royal Navy navigator back then. I would have been like I would just say the Cape of Good Horn. Like, what the hell are you on about? um, yeah. So apparently Cook was found a welcoming environment among officials and merchants. He attended a dinner with the governor of the Cape colony there, the Dutch governor. Um, the crew went ashore. I don't know if they got in any fights or anything. Um, but some officers took excursions to study local plants and wildlife. Um, one crew member caught for coining was punished and sent back to England. So there you go. Okay, well, one of them got into a bit of trouble. Um,
He was forging coins, the bastard.
how dare he? I mean, fair enough. He was lucky to have his hands cut off. Um, so I was gonna say, there was a storm that came in and damaged tents and equipment on the ship, but the ship was okay. Um, just going to say the Discovery arrived as well, having experienced the storm and had been blown off course near the port for a week. Clark's crew remained healthy though, and managed. They came ashore all okay, and the ship was arrived in good conditions and meeting up with the Resolution. So in on the 1st December and the 13th, the two ships located and named the Prince Edward Islands. So there you go. They named it, and 12 days later, Cook found the Kerguelen Islands. I don't know if I'm pronouncing that correctly. I think I am. Which Cook failed to find on his second voyage
That's
when
that's
past
what
it.
I've always called them, um, AI. So yeah,
Yeah, and yeah, he came very close in the second voyage. He was like again like about 50 miles from when traveling past it, just missed it. But thanks to the storm, they managed to find it, as well as the Prince Edward Islands as well.
yeah. You have to remember that if you're at the very top of the mast of a sailing ship, where you put your lookouts, um, they can see maybe, I don't know, 15 miles around the ship, something like that.
Yeah. Um, and during this time, again, they had strong westerly winds, legacy of the storm, and they managed to reach um, Van Diemen's Land on the 26th of January, 1777, um, where they gathered provisions.
Tasmania today, by the way,
Yeah,
guys.
Tasmania today, um, where they acquainted with the locals there and gathered provisions and wood. Um, they then landed back at Queen Charlotte Sound in New Zealand on the 12th of February. Again, gathering resources, fresh water, and also vegetables from previous planting that they had put on there as well. And because of this, then fishing, the crew remained free from scurvy, but because Cook maintained the strict routine of including brewing spruce beer as a grog substitute. Grog.
Yeah, a grog is a mixture of rum and water. Later on, Royal Navy sailors would have lime juice added to this, which would stop them getting scurvy. But spruce beer also had a limited amount of vitamin C in it, which is why Cook was using that.
Mm. Bit of a side note, but I believe don't when the orcs in Lord of the Rings when they're like forcing um Merry, when they're sort of like when they're kidnapped him or the Urukai or whatever it was they were, didn't they force like a drink, like a black drink down their neck called grog? Bit of a side
They
note,
may have done, but what grog really means is rum and water. In Australia, instead of the way British people, William, say booze, yeah,
yeah,
for alcohol. In
yeah,
Australia, people say grog, and the reason for that is that for the first probably 30 or 40 years of Australia's existence, the only alcohol easy to get was grog, like rum and water, which you could buy off ships. And also the infamous New South Wales Corps, the so called Rum Corps, the reason they became infamous is that when a new ship pulled up into Australian harbours, these scumbags who were almost all military cowards who were too scared to fight the French and so preferred to be sent to Australia. The officers of this rum corps would go to any ship that turned up into, say, Sydney Harbour, and they would buy up all of the rum the ship could spare. Sorry, all of the grog the ship could spare, and then they would sell it to the settlers at highly inflated prices. That's how the Rum Corps, the New South Wales Corps, got its name. They were
ah,
not good guys. They were not good guys. And like I said, they were British Army soldiers, but they were British Army soldiers who didn't fancy fighting the French in the peninsula with Wellington. They much preferred like lording it over convicts in New South Wales.
oh, well, there we go. Oh, there you go. So that's where that's probably where I've heard it from as well. And certainly,
Also, when Captain William Bligh eventually became governor of New South Wales, it was the Rum Corps, the New South Wales Corps, who deposed him because he was trying to stop them doing stuff like buying up all the alcohol off any ship that arrived in Sydney Harbour and then selling it at 3 times the price they paid for it.
ultimate price gouging. Bloody hell.
Yeah, but that's why Bligh was deposed. It wasn't because he was a bad guy. It was because the New South Wales Rum Corps were scumbags. They were
Oh,
the scum of the British Army, basically.
I would have called in extra military help and had have those fuckers strung up on the nearest tree. Wouldn't allow that to happen.
Well, you have to remember that when the first fleet arrived in Australia, William, the soldiers were Royal Marines. But the Royal Marines didn't want to guard convicts. They wanted to go and be soldiers. So they kept petitioning London to be sent somewhere else. And so eventually, London replaced the Royal Marines with the New South Wales Corps. But because the New South Wales Corps only had one job, it was to guard convicts, right?
Yeah,
And they were never going to fight the French because the Royal Navy was never going to let the French arrive in Australia. Um, it was the safest job imaginable in the Royal Navy, so long as you were all right with guarding prisoners all the time, including like women. And so the New South Wales Corps were the lowest scumbags in the whole history of the universe, without exception. They were all scumbags. That's why they were called the Rum Corps, because that's what they did. They made loads of money by cornering all the alcohol suppliers in Australia. But they were not good guys. They were scum. Honest. The more I've read about them, the more I hate them. To be honest with
yeah. Um, where are we?
you, you are
Oh,
about halfway through Cook's third voyage.
yeah.
Bit more than halfway actually, because
Probably been.
he's heading up north now.
Yeah, yeah. So after New Zealand, that the locals were somewhat wary because he brought Marines ashore, um, and they're worried that there was going to be retaliation. The Maori were worried that there would be retaliation from the previous last couple of years of the incident that resulted in the 10 dead sailors and all that.
And there wasn't, and there wasn't.
No, there wasn't. There wasn't. Contrary to every fucking smart aleck lefty twat in New Zealand and Australia likes to proclaim. Um, sorry, I'm tired and grouchy at the moment. I'm just ignore me. Um,
Mate, I don't blame you. I'm always grouchy, and I'm always tired about lefty liars. But
um, he traded with them. He even gave some local chieftains goats and pigs, as like a parting gift and everything. But he wouldn't give them um, he he showed them how to keep the animals alive, but didn't leave like a larger livestock due to well supply reasons.
and these people always wanted more. Like if you gave any of these Pacific Islanders a gift, they always wanted more. Like one of the things that Bligh found during the bounty expedition is that the natives would come ashore at night and try and steal the nails from the ship. Like they'd steal anything basically that they could get their hands on. They had no, they didn't have many morals. Let's put it that way.
No, so Cook left Ship Cove for Tahiti. He was all and he was already running behind schedule at this point. Um, and so this was they were going to miss the optimal season point to explore the North Pacific. So in summer, um, and so this would require extending the journey for another year and further straining supplies. Um, Apparently, after leaving New Zealand at the end of February, relationships on the Resolution deteriorated uh, over Cook punishing the entire crew for theft by cutting meat rations leading to a standoff when the crew refused to eat. Um, this sort of marked a point where Cook and sort of a rift between Cook and his men. Um, then the sort of a slow voyage to the Society Islands. Again,
He,
plagued by unfavorable winds.
William, can I just say, look, in order to finish this evening, Cook goes up to Hawaii, and from there he goes into the Bering Strait. Okay, if we do that, we can finish it reasonably. But basically, he sails from New Zealand up to Hawaii, stops there very briefly, and then pisses off to the Bering Strait, which is this piece of water between basically Russia and Alaska these days. Um,
Yes.
and of course, it's iced up all the time because, it is. It's still iced up, despite what the greenies tell you, by the way. It's still always iced up. Unless you've got a powerful nuclear icebreaker, you can't get through it. But anyway, Cook goes up and looks at this for a while, and then eventually he returns to Hawaii because that's kind of the nearest place he can get some supplies.
He
Um,
did
I, I,
he did chart, I will say this, he did chart Oregon, present day Oregon,
oh
naming
yeah, yeah, which is the extreme northwest coast of America. Yes, he did.
yes, and
Absolutely.
he did name a well, I guess what would you call it? Uh uh One of
Island,
the Cape.
archipelago.
Oh, Cape. Cape. It was he saw a Cape. Um, uh, foul named it Cape Foul Weather due to the poor weather conditions of the case of Oregon at the time.
Perfectly reasonable. But yeah, no, he goes up and he investigates the Bering Strait. But, the Bering Strait is the Bering Strait. It's almost always iced up. And like I said, it still is, despite the bullshit that all the ice is melting, the greeny morons will lie to you about, including many so called scientists. So he wasn't able to get into there, basically. And he did a bit of a detour, as you can see on William's map here. But basically, he ends up going back to Hawaii because that's the closest place he thinks he can get some fresh supplies. And I'm going to hand this over to William again at this point.
Yeah. So yeah, while up there, he was um, the sort of communicating with the Nukta tribe um, in I guess what's now Alaska.
I.e., Eskimos or Inuits,
I
depending
think
what
they're
you
like
want to call them.
Inuits, yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Eskimos
Inuit,
and Inuits are the same, by the way. But whatever.
yeah. And they didn't, unfortunately, they didn't prove too useful for Cook and his guys because of communication problems, poor weather, and also Clerk decided to become ill, due to the weather. So he was sort of bedridden. Um, he did note though that there were the Nukta people who were caring for him were fine, jolly, full-faced fellows marked with tattoos and piercing. That's a quote. He called them fine, jolly fellows. So they had sort of like fatty faces and all that sort of stuff, and with his
Doesn't
seals.
doesn't sound like he was like a terrible racist, though, does it, William?
No, no, didn't. You know, um, Again, they weren't used to firearms, so they were quite obsessed. But apparently, there were occasions where they did steal the firearms. There was like quite a bit of thieving. Again, they decided to take stuff that didn't belong to them.
No morals. None of these people had any morals about stealing things. this is important to get across to people. Like,
Yeah.
none of the people in the Pacific, anywhere, had any idea of any morals because they didn't have any. Basically, is the truth of the story. But I mean, what?
The Indians in when the Spanish, even like hundreds of years earlier, when they let the Spanish before, even the non-Aztec tribes in central Mexico, um, they did this with the Spanish. Same thing happened. Yeah, there was
Yeah, no,
trickery and stuff.
it's the same of all the African peoples, for example. Like, if they stole something and got punished, that was bad because they got punished. But it wasn't because they stole something. They didn't understand that stealing something was bad. None of these people did. None of them.
Um, so in May, 20th of May, another storm approached them while they were sort of searching at this point. Um, the captain could decided to pause to repair the leaky ship while assessing whether the current location was an inlet or sought after passage. So this was like in one of the entrances to one of the lakes of Canada or Alaska. Um, and uh, This is where you had this sort of debate where Bligh dismissed the potential further exploration, saying that he didn't think that there was any direct passage. Gore remained somewhat optimistic that if they carried on looking, they may be able to find it. Um, though Cook opted to leave the inlet and doubt and sort of saying that you know and I think this was a fair assessment. He said that we have scoured and we have gone even in small canoes with the Inuits up and down the coastline. If we can't find it, then it doesn't exist, effectively.
Cook was, of course, entirely correct until the days when you can get very powerful icebreakers, which were like, 200 years ahead of Cook. So, yeah.
Yeah, and because he reached the limit of the inlet of where he thought the passage would be, he decided to exit it and name that sort of inlet as Prince William Sound, which would as a sort of a final naming of the location there. Um, with the June deadline approaching, they were forced south instead of north, leading Cook and King to analyze maps for possible routes. Um, Apparently, Cook was sort of writing in diaries one day, hopeful, a bit despair whether to continue the search or to sail on. Um, and the problem is, you had different officers. Gore was very optimistic, but then Bligh was sort of more pragmatic and realistic on this, saying no, this is a massive waste of time, and also that the quite a few of the ship people were falling sick. There was damage to the ships, and also the again the fear of the weather. The winds crashing them against these rocks, and if
William, I think it's worth saying, look, at this point, Cook can see that the object of this voyage, i.e., finding the Northwest Passage, is not going to happen. And he was right about that, of course. So at
yeah
this point, he decides to return to Hawaii on his way home back to England. And I think this is where we can wrap this stream up
yeah
because
so
sadly, this is where Cook gets killed. But anyway,
yeah
but
so on the 20th on the 20 I was
the thing
just
I'm trying to say is Cook realized like there isn't a Northwest Passage that any ship in the 1780s can get through. And he was entirely correct about that. So he therefore decides, I'm going to fall back to Hawaii, get some more fresh provisions, and then go home. Sorry,
yeah
William.
so yeah in November. of he arrived back in Hawaii, um, and the uh, hold on a sec. Let me bring up my notes a minute. Um, because this one is on the death of Ku. So and
Basically, the
on the
Hawaiian
11th of Feb,
chiefs.
yeah, hold on. 11th of February, they returned to Kela Kuka Bay to make repairs. And so Marine Corporal John Ledyard wrote in this letter, on return to this bay was a disagreeable to us as it was to the inhabitants. We were reciprocally tired of each other. They had been oppressed and were wary of our uh, prostituted alliance. So this was previous interactions. It was also equally evident from the looks of the natives as well as every other appearance that our friendship was now at an end, and that we had nothing to do but to hasten our departure to some different island where our vices were not known, and where our intrinsic virtues might gain us another short space of being wondered at. The return of Cook, representing during the season of Q, which was contrary to Hawaiian belief and caused tradition. So he arrived back during a religious ceremony with the local tribes there. Um, the time there was no welcoming crowd as the priests had placed a taboo, a kabu, on the bay. The priest did give the British permission to set up camp near the shrine, so the Resolution mast could be repaired. Um, the chieftain Kalaniupu questioned Cook about his return and was displeased with his answers. He was also displeased with the priest for allowing the British to set up camp on the shore. Nevertheless, he lifted the taboo on the bay and traded with the ships. Um, this is when the sailors and the commanders and the lieutenants noticed increase in thefts and more defiant attitude from the Hawaiians. And the Hawaiian chief took the armorer's tongues from the Discovery and was punished with 40 lashes. The tongues were taken again, but were returned the same day. Um, the British landing party tried to take a Hawaiian canoe in retaliation. A dispute followed in which a prominent chief named uh, Pali was hit with an oar, and an angry crowd, about 300 Hawaiians, responded by hurling stones and beating the landing party. On the same day, a party gathering water for ships was dispersed by Hawaiians, and Marines were pelted with stones. Following, Cook ordered his Marines to load their muskets with balls rather than small shot, and ordered all Hawaiians off the ships. Um, on the 14th of Feb, the Cook heard that the Discovery's large cutter had been stolen. He ordered boats to be stationed at both ends of the bay to capture any canoes attempting to leave. He then set off in the Resolution's pinnace to the chief's settlement of Kawawalu on the northern end of the bay, where he intended to take the chief hostage until the cutter was returned. Cook had previously held Tongan and Tahitian chiefs. We mentioned the previous streams and stuff hostage as well as like Hawaiian, sorry, New Zealand Maori figures as well. So this was he'd done this before. Um, when it came to stolen items, um, Cook landed at a beach near Koalu, accompanied by 10 Marines. The Resolution's launch and cutter remained just offshore to enforce the blockade. Two young sons of the chief led Cook's party to their father, who had been sleeping. Cook spoke to the chief and was convinced that he knew nothing about the theft of the cutter. When Cook asked him to go with him to the Resolution, he agreed, and his two young sons ran ahead to the boat. However, as Cook and the chief were walking hand in hand to the boat, one of the chief's wives, Keno Kapele, pleaded with him not to go. She was joined by two chiefs who sat the main chief down. A man began chanting and made an offering to a coconut to Cook and the chief. A crowd of 2,000 to 3,000 Hawaiians had gathered, and some began to don their protective war mats and to arm themselves with spears, daggers, and stones. Cook, upon seeing this sudden aggression, ordered his marines to form a line along the rocks near the shore and told Lieutenant of Marines Molesworth Phillips this quotation here: "We can never think of compelling him, chieftain, to go on board without killing a number of people." And this is where there's a bit of a change of accounts. The main account that I've got here is from Molesworth Phillips, which the fact that he was actually on the beach and was commanding the Marines at the time makes me think that this is probably the best account of what happened. Um, the Hawaiians learned that the a chief named Kamulu had been shot on the other side of the bay, which angered the crowd. Hence why they arrived with armed and everything. When the warrior threatened Cook with a dagger and a stone, Cook fired a small shot at him, but it had little effect because the warrior was wearing his war mat. The crowd began throwing stones and knocking down a marine. Philip uh, Molesworth was attacked with a dagger, but fended off his assailant with the butt of his musket. After which Cook fired a ball at a Hawaiian, killing him. One of the chief's sons was already in the uh, pinnace, but returned to shore when the firing started. The Hawaiians launched a general attack, and the Marines and the boat crew opened fire. The Marines fired one round, but did not have time to reload before the warriors overwhelmed them. Cook ordered the Marines to take to the boats and then turned to signal the boats to move closer to the shore. It's unclear, however, whether this was ordering them a ceasefire or to reposition themselves on the shoreline. That's no one really knows at that point because Cook didn't really get that far. During the evacuation to the boats, Cook was clubbed on the back of the head and stabbed. He was then surrounded by Hawaiians who beat and stabbed him to death. Phillips and four Marines made it to the pinnace and the cutter, which pulled away, launched away after firing. They continued to fire towards the Hawaiians. Commander Lieutenant John Williamson misinterpreted Cook's signal, probably on that account, Phillips says. The Resolution opened fire with cannon, and most of the Hawaiians retreated. 4 Marines were also killed in the affray, and the British left the 5 bodies ashore. 17 Hawaiians were killed at Kalawagu, and 8 were killed elsewhere around the bay on the same day. Let's bring up the famous painting, shall we, Andrew?
Yeah, sorry, William. Let's go for it.
I'm trying to find the painting, but there's quite a few actually.
The one I know best is the one of Captain Cook claiming Australia with the Union Jack being raised, but there are many, as you say.
Yeah. there's a lot of AI slop ones. I'm not doing that.
Yeah, yeah, there are always AI slop these days, sadly. Orlandi B is saying in the chat that he is lionized in Australia to this day, with various bars, hotels, statues commemorating him, etc. Good.
So here we go.
Oh, this is when he gets killed by the Hawaiians, I take it.
Yeah, this is the Hawaiians. Um, so this one is, he he's clubbed round the back of his head, and then of course there's the fatal stab. You see with the dagger, he's stabbed. I think what is admirable though is he does order the Marines and sailors who to get them on boats, and he's sort of like left standing
Yeah. Yeah,
on
he
the
tries
shore.
to save his men to the last.
Yeah, that is admirable. And the thing is, as it is, this is confirmed by Phillips, by the way. There is one painting where he's like on the ground, like looks like he's begging for mercy and everything while he's been clubbed to death. In reality, he stood up. He was bleeding from his head. He stood up with the butt of a musket, and yeah, he
Yeah.
was like he was going out swinging. He actually did go out swinging. He wasn't going to go
Oh
out.
no, I would not think anything less of Captain Cook. He was a great English and British man, and quite sure he went out fighting. It's the only way you can go out if you're a good English and British man.
Well, I guess especially if you know you're going to die, you might as well go out fighting.
Yeah, absolutely. But yeah, no, listen, to me, Captain Cook is one of the great heroes of England and Britain. We should be enormously proud of him. I know good Australians are proud of him, good Canadians, good New Zealanders. The only people who are not are people who hate Britain and hate the West and are basically scum as far as I'm concerned. They're the only people who don't like
Yeah.
Captain Cook.
The
Um,
the the funny thing is the Hawaiian royalty before Hawaii was conquered by America, when it was like this kingdom fairly friendly with Britain. Afterwards, it did
they
have friendly.
they still have the Union Jack on their state flag or
Yeah,
whatever
because
it is.
the king of Hawaii, when some British agents were appeared in Hawaii for relationships and everything, and they he loved he was really enamored with the Union Jack, that he said, "Oh, I want that in my flag," and so it was included in the flag. And um, I believe also it was the last Queen of Hawaii. They on the beach that Captain Cook was killed, and you can still go there today because
Mm.
one of my friends who went on holiday to Hawaii went to the shrine. There is a shrine to where Captain Cook was killed.
Shall I tell you something interesting, William?
Go ahead.
Hawaii has a lot of black volcanic sand, right? Because it's a volcanic island.
Volcanic, yeah.
Yeah. So a lot of the sand that's actually around the big tourist beaches in Hawaii is not Hawaiian sand because Hawaiian sand is black and volcanic. A lot of it comes from Newcastle in New South Wales in Australia because that's golden.
The imported sand.
They import sand, they really do. But yeah, no, look, I think Captain Cook is absolutely one of the great heroes of Britain. I mean, if you had been born, I don't know, 20 or 30 years earlier than me, and I was born in 1965, you would have been taught he was one of the great heroes of Britain just at school. I wasn't really, because even in 1965, everyone was becoming left wing and scum. But a bit earlier and you would have, but even when I was a kid, you could find books about Captain Cook in the school library. Um, and I think he was a wholly admirable man. Like as we've explained in these two streams, he joined the Merchant Navy, worked his way up. Then he joined the Royal Navy and worked his way up again, and eventually became probably the great one of the greatest explorers and navigators in the whole of world history. Um, he's a
Yeah.
wholly admirable man. Like, did he have occasional faults? Sure, but they were so few that even in critical biographies, you can't find many.
No, I mean he was ambitious, he was a risk taker, but he was also sensible. He was highly intellectual. He was very much in
Loved his wife. Was always faithful to his wife,
yeah,
as far as
she
anyone can work out.
yeah.
Um, yeah, like there's not much not to like about Captain Cook, really.
He also, and this is something I've noticed with some people. When I say great, I mean like in the Carlyle sense of great. The bounds of class and social class, when you have like these great figures in history, for them, class, they sort of transcend any class problems.
Yes,
They sort of go beyond.
yes,
And he was one of those people. The class thing, it never tied him, not like anybody else probably around him, which is
but
incredible.
that's to me, William. That's a uniquely English and British thing. Britain always had this. Let me think of the word. You were never tied totally to what you started in Britain. Yeah, you
Yeah.
always did have an escape if you were exceptional enough. If you were exceptional enough, brave enough, intelligent enough, there was always a way to rise, and Captain Cook proves that perfectly.
And he became, I mean, we talked about Nelson. I mean, Nelson is a legendary figure in his own right, but I think, Cook and, mm, you know, I would say for British, um, in some ways he is on par, equal, maybe even slightly because of his death and everything. But the fact is, in my mind, and growing up, as you said, he is the face of Australia. For he is like the almost like heroic symbol for the spirit that would become Australia, New Zealand.
Oh, for
Um,
sure. Yeah, for
yeah,
sure, William. He arrived in a total wilderness that didn't have a single
no,
road in the whole
al-
continent.
almost like a Caesar figure in Gaul or in that sort of thing. Like his presence, because this is something that I think isn't talked about in the British Empire enough. One thing that people hate is they'll talk about like the treatment of Indians and that sort of stuff, and like, oh yeah, we just used Indian economy and everything, and that's a separate matter. But
Which
what?
is a total lie, by the way.
Yeah,
But
it's a
yeah,
total it's a total lie that's put out by Hindu nationalists who are sub 5 IQ retards. But what is incredible though, and is something that people starting, I've seen a few people sort of talk about it this week actually, is we created and recreated European societies in places like Australia and New Zealand where there was nothing, like literally
and
nothing,
Canada and America,
and Canada and America. And
and places like Rhodesia. Yeah, absolutely, man. Yeah.
the Pacific Northwest, California, the people who would then, because they would be the people who inspired, like the Lewis and Clark. When
Yeah,
you read
yeah,
Albion
yeah.
Seed, they read about Cook. They were fascinated by him and his ventures. They wanted to emulate it. And the people who went out westwards, who would then settle the Anglo Protestants, who would then settle in California, and in places like the Oregon territories and all that.
Yeah,
They
when they were going out west, I get what you mean, William.
yeah,
Yeah,
going out westwards. Yeah, this Cook was a canon of figures of adventurers, and I guess people you would say like the Faustian man. I would actually say in some ways, if you were to say the Faustian spirit, I think Cook actually embodies that in some way.
100%,
He's
mate.
this
I
rest.
listen. I'm not going to disagree with you for a second. One reason I wanted to do Captain Cook on this series of streams is he's one of the greatest British guys that's ever been, for sure,
Yeah, and the
for
funny thing
sure.
is the people in where you are in Australia at the moment, and in New Zealand and in Britain and in the Anglo countries, they don't hate. The funny thing is they don't hate Cook because half of them probably don't even know half the things he's done. They probably don't even realize, what we've talked about on this.
I'd go further, William. I'd say until very, very recently, when white Australians are told to hate Captain Cook these days because of lefty traitors and Aboriginals who are normally only about 15% Aboriginal, so are also lefty traitors, really. Until recently, Captain Cook statues were all over Australia, and all Australians were very proud of him. I mean, start
Yeah,
of our civilization,
yeah, and you had that, the Irish band. What was it called? Kneecap. That sort of engaged. That sort of has been engaging as well. And when they went to Australia, in desecration, and they even like joked about Captain Cook statues there and all that. And look, I ultimately the reason why people don't they hate the idea and the spirit that Captain Cook presented and
Yes,
embodied. They
yeah.
hate that spirit, and
It's British and it's Western and it's
it's
civilized,
European
and they
and civilized. Yeah,
detest
it's
it.
European, and
Yeah.
I all I can say is um, these people they're slaves. They're slaves because they have allowed themselves to be manipulated by this entire narrative of anti-colonialism, Marxism, as people have discussed. It
Yep.
only comes from one place, and it's people who hate Europeans. It's as
Well,
simple as
and
that.
especially hate British Anglo people because
And British Anglo people.
let's not forget Anglos are the most hated of all Europeans because we were the most successful of all Europeans.
Yeah,
So yeah,
yeah,
fuck you all as far as I'm concerned.
yeah.
If you
And
don't like Anglos, get fucked, guys.
and it's
But
funny because all those people you know they will um or dare I be spicy,
yeah, be
they
careful, mate. This is your channel, not mine.
their their hatred from the Europeans basically comes from their master's directive in my
Yeah,
view,
exactly. And their
because
masters are not Europeans. Their masters are the likes of Hamza Yusuf, etc.
etc. Yeah. And the reason we know this is whenever you look at them critique um European countries or even that country in the Middle East, it's
Yeah,
always
yeah,
down.
yeah. The small
Yeah,
hat place, you mean, mate?
yeah, the small hat place. They don't critique it so much for the the founding stock. They don't necessarily critique it. I mean, they may even go into far as existence, but for them, it's all
William,
colonialism.
can I just say this, right? Trump's war in the Middle East at the moment is not desperately popular, right?
Yeah,
And I don't know if I'm the only one who's noticed, and I'm sure you have, William, right? That everyone on the left in America, including 99% of their mainstream media, was always willing to slag Trump off for the least thing that he did that they could try and claim was bad, right? The one thing they're not slagging off at all is Trump's war for Israel in the Middle East.
Well, that's
Which
true, and
should really tell
that's
you
true.
who these people really support.
And it's like, I mean, sorry, I'm gonna. These people who attack Cook, right? They're also, it's the the pro-Palestine march and everything,
Yeah.
and all that. Did those people criticize Israel for what they did with the Jesus statue in Lebanon this week?
Of course not.
No, they didn't.
Did,
And
did,
this,
did, did they criticize Israel for bombing the Christians' girls' school? No, of course they didn't.
no,
It's
no.
like, it's
Do,
just a joke, mate.
do they criticize Israel with their NGO Israel Aid flooding Europe full of Africans and
Not on
Orientals
your
from
Nelly. Not on your
no
Nelly, William.
and this is this is my point is these people like Kneecap, I mean they are left wing containment. If I was a left winger, I was just, well, these fuckers are just left wing containment, and the people in Australia who have a go are left wing containment because their criticism is not the fact that this hostile civilization has a deeply anti-European bent to it, and also promotes some of the worst like shit going, like pornography. I mean,
William, can I just point out to you, right? Living in Australia, right? The people who damage and desecrate statues of Captain Cook, they also do that to Anzacs. These
yeah,
are exactly the same people, and they will do exactly the same thing to an Anzac statue. They detest and hate all of your ancestors, not just Captain Cook.
no, absolutely, and that that sort of viciousness and that sort of moral righteousness and grievance and everything, it actually stems from the Holocaust Guilt Network ultimately.
Which is weird if you're an Englishman or an Australian or a
Yeah,
New Zealander or a Canadian or a South African or an American, all of whom fought against that shit.
but the reason why that's so powerful is because in the last 80 years or so, it's if
Lies,
you it
William, lies.
total yeah in the last 80 years, if you engage in that sort of way of thinking, it means that you can be excused for anything. I mean, that number one, that's how Israel gets to do what it's wanted and currently does what it
But
wants without any
Israel,
reason
Israel
criticized.
is the closest thing to a Nazi state that doesn't give a shit about anybody else that exists in the modern world. This is the weird thing.
Yeah, and the people who like to criticize them, the same people who attack Cook statues and everything, they will only criticize them from this bizarre like colonial thing, like this like
Yeah, but
equating.
that's why they're not our allies, William. You know, these people who hate and detest Israel, all right? I am, as you know, no fan of Israel whatsoever. And I'm certainly no fan of Zionism. But you know what? I'm not friends with the people who hate them either, because most of those people don't hate them for the right reasons.
Well, this is the thing. It's like ultimately it comes down to the collect of foreign influence, but also how they perceive themselves. Their hatred of Israel is just because it's not for any ideological reasons. It's because of they have this sort of warped Star Wars version of colonialism and empire. They have this really like Disney-fied
Yeah,
version
well,
of
you
what it
know,
means.
as far as the Star Wars is concerned, I was always a fan of the Empire, but there we go.
Yeah, but you're right.
But
They aren't our friends, and
they're
you
not.
know,
It's
and
it's like in the old days, William. Do you remember when people were trying to tell us that who's that chick who wrote Harry Potter? Um,
J.K.
the
Rowling.
Yeah, J.K. Rowling. She's a TERF, okay? So she doesn't like trans people, trans men pretending to be women in female spaces. And in that, I support her. But you know what? She's not our ally. She's a feminist. She doesn't want men to be treated as men and women to be treated as women. She wants men to be destroyed. That's what feminism wants. That's why everything that is basically averagely manly in the Western world these days, and that includes many things about Captain Cook, by the way, and his crews, um, is disgusting now. It's toxic masculinity.
Yeah.
Well, according to feminists, all masculinity is toxic masculinity. And I
And the
say, get fucked to that. I'm sorry, I am a man. I'm not going to pretend to be a woman.
and the problem is, like, we're I'm in my 30s. You're in your 60s, aren't you? We've got we may have on my channel and in your channel, we've got young people coming through, particularly
Yep.
people say in reform. If we were to sit here and, you know, we say to them regularly, you need to reconnect with your own culture, with your own identity. I mean, ultimately, the problem with, I guess you say, the right, there is the element that it is slop. They're easily led. They're easily manipulated. That's all true. That's all true. But the problem, ultimate problem, is you've got entire generations. Even people older than me, people probably even up to your age, aren't you? I mean, we're a bit eccentric because we're into our history and we're into these sorts of things. But
Yep.
you have whole people who are generations of people who are totally disconnected
Oh,
on
they've
a
lost it, mate. They,
total
you know, people talk about boomers, right? Who are people slightly older than me, and yeah, some of those people have just lost it. They have
yeah.
lost all contact with their ancestral roots. They have no fucking idea.
No, and that for me is like the main problem. And maybe and the thing is, to rectify that, it is doing stuff like this. It's doing stuff like we do with like the Pendragon and all that. I don't know. I don't think it can be sorted politically, but it like through political parties because it's a separate method. But what it can do is it can actually demonstrate that yes, we have an identity and we're going to follow through with it.
The
And
the closest we've got, William, is Rupert Lowe and Restore Britain. That's the closest we got. I support Rupert Lowe. I support Restore Britain. I joined it immediately. Restore Britain was made a thing long before it became a political party. So yeah, we
no,
seem to have
100%.
Yeah, we. But yeah, can we solve it politically? I hope so, because it's going to be bloody messy unless we can.
I see what I mean. We've disappeared. I don't know how
Yeah,
that's
we have.
happened. I
Don't
don't know
know,
how
mate.
that's happened. But no, you're right, and we'll
Thank
see.
you very much, William, for hosting this show, and I apologise to viewers. It's not on my stream. Like I said at the
Yeah,
beginning of the
well,
stream, I've had issues. Hopefully, it will be sorted by the weekend when we have our next um, Splendid Isolation stream. So,
yeah, 100%. And as I say to people, I mean, I don't know if you've seen this, Andrew. You know the art stream we did on my channel some
yeah, I
time ago.
like that. That was good.
Yeah,
Who
and
was the chap who was on there? He was really good as a guest.
Alexander Adams.
Yeah, very good. Very good chap.
Yeah, and it's really funny because I was someone I still owe us. I need to do a part two, particularly because the late Bowden, Jonathan Bowden,
Yep.
tapes have been dropped on Picture Alternatives
Cool.
YouTube, where he's actually talks about art and he talks about Turner, Constable,
Oh,
I,
excellent! Now
I,
I want to hear those. Can you send me the
I
links
will
to
send it
those
on.
in DMs, please, mate?
Yeah, I'll send it over on Discord after we finish. But what I will say is, if this was actually one of the last ones he did. He was out. I think he was out and about. I think it was maybe it was London. I don't know. He was out and about doing like it was like a street sort of like
Like
uh,
2010, 2011 ish, something like that.
yeah, it looks like 2010, something like that. And what's quite interesting, Duke, is stuff that you were talking about Turner and the Impressionist movement, and that I was
Yeah,
talking about with like and Alexander Adams were talking about the like the line and the in futurist movement. He was talking about it then in very similar terms, which I thought
yeah,
was quite
I could believe that. He's got a really good talk about. Oh crikey, I can't remember the guy's name now. Canadian guy, I believe. But he was an
um
artist and writer.
um William Blake, is it?
No, 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 no.
No.
Early 20th century dude. Um, it doesn't matter, William. But yeah, you people can go find him. Um, can I just also say, guys, if you want to see me on something else, hopefully, don't know this for sure, but hopefully next week I'll be with Endeavour and Morgoth, and we're going to be reviewing the movie Gallipoli, which is a pretty good film. I don't totally like it because there are bits about it which are your typical Aussie anti-pommy movie bit, but so it's mostly a good film.
Yeah, and yeah, I've watched. I've only seen it once, when I was at school with
I
lads.
actually, William, I actually prefer The Light Horseman. I think that's a better movie. But actually, it's not a better movie. It's a more accurate movie, put it that way.
Yeah.
But anyway,
There's a game on Steam. I think I mentioned it, but it's about Gallipoli. It's from the Newfoundland regiment perspective on that, and it's
the Blue
uh,
Puttees.
the Blue Petite right, and it's called I think it's the Kaluri Path or something like that.
Yeah, that'd be
So
interesting.
check
That'd
that
be
out, and
interesting.
it's the guy involved with it is he's from Newfoundland, and he's done very extensive uh research into it, and
They were the only colonial regiment that fought on the first day of the Somme, and they suffered just as badly as all the rest of the army did.
I mean proportionally they were like 90% wiped out. It
Yeah,
was real
yeah.
awful, absolute tragedy that happened
Bear
to
in
them.
mind, first day of the Somme was the worst day in British Army history. Um, Almost 20,000 dudes were killed. Killed. Almost 50,000 wounded.
I
One
mean,
day. One day.
the problem that I've always had with the First World War is just it is actually more destructive than the fall of the Western Roman Empire in many ways.
Yeah, I
Far more
mean,
destructive.
I'm listening to a Western Front book at the moment, and every 5 minutes I just think to myself, why did we join this war? Why did Britain join this war? Why did we join? Why didn't we just let France, Russia, and Germany fight it out? What the fuck did it have to do with us?
I mean, what did we get? We got uh
Nothing. Well, we got a
well,
little bit more colonial territory, but basically became not quite bankrupt, but we, instead of being the richest nation in the world, which we were in 1914, we became, I don't know, probably the seventh or eighth richest nation in the world,
yeah,
something like
the
that.
end.
You know?
I mean, the end of the European monarchies, the rise of Bolshevism, the mass
Yep.
murder of Christians,
Yeah, there was
The
nothing good about it, mate. It was just a disaster.
The rise of political Zionism,
It
the
it was
pressure
it
put
was a
on.
total disaster, William. It really
I
was,
mean,
mate.
yeah, there's no redeeming features.
No,
I mean,
nothing. Unless you're an American, nothing good happened in the First World War. If you're an American, a few
and a
things did, but
Bolshevik, and if you're like a Trotsky,
or a
yeah,
Bolshevik. Yeah,
yeah,
you have to
Bolshevik,
be American or Bolshevik to see anything good whatsoever about the First World War. Maybe a Frenchman, I guess, if you got short-term memory loss, but whatever, you know. But
I
certainly,
mean,
from Britain's point of view, it was a complete and total disaster with not a single redeeming feature. We should have just stayed out of it.
the 20th century.
If we did come in, it should have been in like late 1917, like the Americans.
The Japanese did quite well out the First World War.
Yeah, they did all right. Yeah, they did.
Yeah, they did
They did
okay.
all right. I mean, they sent warships to help the Royal Navy in the Mediterranean. They took the German colony of Tsingtao in China. But yeah, they did all right. But I mean, they didn't do anything wrong either. And they certainly didn't send 10 divisions to the Western Front to get forward. They weren't that stupid.
No,
Unlike the
no,
British. But anyway, whatever. William, thank you very
yeah.
much for having me on this stream, mate. We've gone nearly 3 hours, and you were tired
I,
ages ago.
I'm tired. I'm going to have to go. Look, we will do an art stream part 2 at some point. I will
Mate,
organise.
if you do that and you need a guest, invite me and I'll come on immediately. Because the
Yeah,
last one was really fun. If you haven't seen William's art stream, go check it out. It's good.
yeah, and I'll try and get John D this time.
Oh,
I
that
know
would be so cool. Yeah, I like John D, actually. He's not a bad guy.
John D, and I'll
Yeah,
maybe I'll get Fend. I'll try and get Fen de Villiers, who's a sculptor. He's actually a professional sculpturist and
that would be
a
cool, man. Yeah,
futurist.
go for it.
Really cool guy, and Pharaoh as well, who also dabbles.
Cool.
I actually been doing build. They're actually like got some genuine artists that I might bring on, and then I'll be quite
Go for it.
intimidated because of it. But yeah,
Well,
no,
that's all right. All you've got to do is stop their arguments. You know, you can just sit in the back, sit in the background.
yeah. No, fair enough. All right, guys. Thanks for joining on, Duke. See you all later.